All right, welcome to the Multi-View 8.1a. So this will be the first one that we're going to make in a solid model. So the one that we have on the screen here is the one that you're challenged to make. And it begins by starting with a new standard IPT. What I want to do is I want to start with a sketch. And we're going to utilize the XY plane. Now this one, we're going to actually draw with a straight line the outline of the shape. So it almost has a doorstop looking shape. So we're going to start with a single line. I'm going to start with this midsection. I'm just going to come out here in a horizontal line. And I'm going to go up in a vertical motion, perpendicular. Go across. Go parallel with this lower line until I get to where it connects and go straight down. Okay. I can right click and click OK. Now that's just a basic shape. That's all we have to do because the dimensioning feature is going to do the rest of the work for us. So according to our drawing, our back is 0.75. Our bottom is 3. I can click out here to get a better look. My top is 0.75. And my front is 0.375. Okay, now that doesn't look right. It's because I made a mistake here. Now, part of it is I made it on purpose, is that I can always go back and change these whenever I want. That's kind of the beauty of how this works, is if I'm not happy with that measurement or if I made a mistake, I can click on this. Right? You can see I can just double click on there, and instead of being 0.75, it's actually supposed to be 1.75. All right. Now, that looks more like it. There we go. Okay. Now, when I'm happy with that, I'm going to finish the sketch. I'm going to click this little home button here. That'll try to give me an isometric view. My next job is when I finish the sketch, it takes me out of the sketching window and into the 3D model, and I'm going to extrude. Now, using the word extrude gives us an opportunity to give it some thickness or some width or body. By extruding that, we'll explain some of these other features here later. The first thing you just have to know is how wide do I need this to be, and by default it goes to 1 inch. Well, that's what our drawing is supposed to be, so I'm going to keep this at 1 inch, and I'll just click OK, and therein lies 8.1a. So what I want to do is, now that it's finished, I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to place it in my views, Save. All right. And this concludes 8.1a. All right, starting a new standard IPT. All right, what we're going to be looking at here is today's 8.2a. Again, we're going to start with a XY plane. We're going to create a rectangle with the given dimensions, 1.75 by 3. I'm going to finish the sketch, and I can extrude it to its desired thickness, which is 1 inch. All right, now this is the second one in the row that we've done by making the actual rectangle, three-dimensional rectangle first. I'm then going to create a sketch on top. We're going to project geometry again, and I'm just going to create a rectangle somewhere in the middle. Now, according to your drawings, it is 0.5 inches from the top, 0.5 inches from the bottom, 0.75 inches from the end, and 0.75 inches from the end. Okay. I can again finish the sketch and extrude. When I select the area to be extruded, it kind of defaults to where it comes out proud of the actual surface, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to cut, so I'm going to cut, and just by coincidence it's 1, but I'm going to go the all, or the distance, and there is my finished 8.2a. All right, so I can file, save as 8.2a, and yes. All right, this video will explain how we're going to do 8.2b, as you can see on the screen. All right, so again, start with a standard IPT and start with an XY plane sketch. All right, this time instead of starting with a solid block, as we've done in the past, I'm going to go back to our original line, and I'm going to make a triangle. And you can see where there's a hidden line, kind of a dotted line. That's where I know when this lines up with my original point, because it is real important that those two lines intersect right there. All right. Now again, making sure that I dimension this correctly. That looks pretty good. I'm going to finish the sketch. I'm going to extrude to the required 1 inch, and that's half the drawing. Now, if you look on your plan for 8.2b, there's a little smaller triangle in the opposite direction. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to create a sketch plane on the back of this. So I'm going to start a sketch on the back side. I'm going to project the geometry. All right. And then what I can do is from this back side, in this back corner, I'm going to come vertical and go perpendicular all the way across until it intersects. I can then give it some of the dimensions that are known. And I'm also going to make this line perpendicular, okay, by using some of my constraints that I learned earlier. Now what that's done now in my original view is you can see this sketch from the back side. It's going to be flush with the back, which is what the plan calls for. Okay. But I am going to finish the sketch, and then I can extrude. Okay. Now, what I've learned so far with the extrusion is I have to select what I want. As you can see, that's going to go a whole inch. Now, here's where I can start to make some modifications on my extrusion. According to my plan, I only need about a ½ inch, so I take that to 0.5. It's still going in the wrong direction. So how do I get this arrow to go in the opposite direction? That's where these windows come in. Direction 2, I can go in both directions for symmetry, but this is what I want to do. I want to go in direction 2, and then click OK. All right, and just like that, I've concluded 8-2B. So I will then File, Save As, make sure it's in my multi-view drawing folders, and this is 8-2B, and that will be saved. Alright, this video, as you can see, is going to be how to construct 8-3A. So, as we always do, we're going to start with a new standard IPT. We're going to create a sketch in the XY plane. And this time I'm going to use a combination of the rectangle and the line tool to create the geometry that I'm looking for. So I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to give it the dimensions that we're familiar with by now, 3 and 1.75. Right. And there is my outline of the rectangle that I'm looking for. All right, so then I'm going to now go to my line, and somewhere along the top of this line, and I want to make sure that I've intersected with the top of that line, I'm going to bring this down and just kind of mimic the shape that I have on my plan. And it's very important. See that light, see that point light up green there? That I click there in that intersection. I'm going to right click and click OK. At this point I can start to dimension the top according to the plan. 0.75. Here to here is 0.875. And from here to here is 1. Okay. Now I'm going to trim this outer portion of the rectangle that I do not need anymore. At that point I can finish the sketch, extrude to 1 inch, and there is my 8-3A. File, Save As. 8-3A, and save. This video will explain how we're going to now construct 8-3B. So that's what it's going to look like when we're finished. Alright, so we are going to start with a standard IPT. Again, starting with an XY plane, and again back to how we are going to construct a block given the dimensions that we're getting very familiar with, and we will then extrude by finishing the sketch to 1. Alright, now here's where, again, we're going to go back to taking and cutting our extrusion from the existing piece that we've already made. So if you look at the geometry on this, if I look at it sideways, it almost looks like the number 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sketch plane and I'm going to bring it over here to this, what we call the end. All right. Again, I'm going to bring it into view a little better. And I'm going to extend the geometry. And I'm going to take my rectangle, see how it turned green, I'm going to bring that up there, then I'm going to bring another rectangle from the top down. Alright, I'm going to right click and OK. Now all I've done is create another rectangle on top of that sketch. What I need to do now is dimension according to what the plan calls for. and 0.5. All right. Now, once I have my my dimensions there, I can finish the sketch. And similar to one of the ones we did earlier, I'm going to extrude. And let's see if you can remember. We are going to select the parts that we're going to extrude, but we're going to cut them all and click OK. All right. And there is your 8.3B. Okay, this video is for 8.4A. Okay, standard IPT, sketch plane XY. And what we're going to do is we're going to borrow a lot of what we've learned from 8.3B. I'm going to make my rectangle. I'm going to very quickly extrude it to size. All right, and now this one has some geometry that is going to be better served looking at it from the end and from the front. All right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the front, do this this side piece first. So I'm going to put an extrusion, and a lot of this is 6 to 1/2 a dozen to another. You could have used the front one first if you wanted to, as long as you kind of get to the same place. All right, so I'm going to, just like the one we did earlier, I'm going to create that geometry, give it the dimensions. Oops. Whoops. Give it the dimensions that it requires. That's what we wanted there. Okay. And I'm going to extrude by selecting and cutting all. Okay. Then I'm going to create a new sketch on the front. Extend the geometry. And again, I'm going to see how that turns green so I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. All right. Dimension, whoops. All right, and that looks good. And again, I'm going to extrude by cutting all. And that finishes or completes my 8.4A. All right, so this next one is going to be 8.4B. And for the first time, we're going to do one that extrudes to the outside, almost like an assembly process on this one. It's not a true assembly, but we're going to make one that looks like a combination of a couple different parts. All right, so I'm going to make a rectangle. And my typical height is 1.75. Now on this one, it's a little shorter. Okay. And again, I'm going to borrow some of the methods that I've used before by just drawing a line on there so it connects. I'm going to dimension that line according to the plan. And here is supposed to be 1. Okay. I can trim I'm going to finish, and I'm going to extrude. All right. Now, according to this, about halfway through, part of my little square comes out of there. So again, I'm going to put a sketch on that plane. I'm going to project the geometry. And I know that this has to be, oops, that's not correct. I know that this has to be 1. Or 0.5, I'm sorry. Okay. And I can extrude 1. This is supposed to be 1 by 1. Okay. That looks pretty good. But I'm not quite finished yet. All right, now when I look at this straight on, it almost looks like it's straight across there. So I have to be careful that I don't confuse myself. All right, so what I'm going to do is I need to put another sketch right here. And at this point, I'm going to use a point. The center point works very nice. And I'm going to stick this right, I'm going to try to put that right in the middle there. Now, I don't want to just guess. So I know that's a 1 by 1 square. So I can dimension that half. And I can also dimension it here to 1/2 inch. Now, knowing that's right in the center, I can make a circle by putting it right in that point. You see where it lights up green? Right click, click OK, and according to the plan, the circle is a 0.5 inch circle. I'm going to finish the edit, and just like before, I'm just going to cut all, and there is the finished product of 8.4B. So I need to file save that. 8.4B. Okay, so this one is going to be 8.5A, and it's going to be a little different. So we're gonna start the same way we typically do. We'll start by making a sketch. Make your rectangular block. Dimension it with the appropriate size. And 3 inches. Okay, I'm going to finish the sketch. Bring it into view. Extrude it to the 1 inch that it requires. And there is my... So what I'm going to need to do now is I'm going to make another sketch on this front plane. Again, bring it into view. And I want to project the geometry. And you can tell you projected the geometry when the yellow border is present. On that first face, I'm going to make sure that it is actually on top of that projected geometry. And I'm just going to drag down another rectangle. Now, according to my plan, this is 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch from each end. All right, and once I do that, I can just pull down. And it's also 1 1/4 inches deep. Okay, so I can finish that. Now, I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to place another sketch on this back area. Again, project the geometry. And do the same thing with what's left over of this. Three-quarters of an inch away. However, now this one is only 0.25 from the end. And I can finish sketch. I'm going to make it look like it's an isometric. And what's new is this loft feature. All right, now this is a little tricky the way we put this together. So what it'll do is it'll take two sketches and create a transitional shape in between those two sketches. Now ours is pretty basic, it's just two rectangles. Okay. So it's a little tricky though in how we go ahead and do this though. Once I click on here, I want to identify my first by clicking on that area, and then where it says click to add, I need to add the second. So I click on that one and I highlight it. So now what I've done is I've identified the two sketches, and I'm going to cut, and notice how the arrow cuts in the direction that I want it to go, and I've now lofted that space in between. Alright, and that looks good. So I can now file Save As. So this is 8.5A, and I'm just going to save that. Okay, and this concludes this video. Okay, this next video will describe 8.5B. Start with a standard TVTE. Start with a sketch. And again, I'm going to use the method of making the rectangle because this makes sense for this one. Oops. There we go. It's playing tricks on me. Alright. So, very similar to some of the things that we've done before. I'm going to bring that across there. Now I want to make my dimensions before I go ahead and trim that off. So this looks 0.875. 0.875, and here to here is 1.625. Okay, I can trim my excess off of there. In this case now, according to my plan, it's only about a 1/2 inch extrusion. All right. And now this one is just a matter of extending the geometry and putting some of these small extrusions on each side. So here's one that I just need to dimension at 0.5 by 0.75. I can extrude okay. And do likewise on this side. And there it is. File save as 8.5B. Alright. This video will explain how to do 8.6A, which is a little more, it's a little easier than it looks. However, there's what we call the steps of protocol, which really matter. So you want to do one before the other, otherwise you might run into problems. So we're going to make our rectangle like we typically would. And I'm going to extrude that to the size that it's desired. All right. Now I'm going to put a sketch on the front. Now here's where our, like I said, protocol matters, which means we're going to do one step before we do the other. And it's very important that we do this step first. And what I'm going to do is with my line, I'm going to make a triangle and make sure it's linked in that bottom corner. You can see it turns green. I'm going to go up, I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to complete the triangle. I'm going to right click and click OK. And I'm going to dimension this to be 0.875, which is correct. I'm going to dimension this to be 1.5, and that looks pretty good. And at that point, I can extrude to cut all. All right. So there I have my little diamond shape there. I can then take a sketch and put it on this end. Oops, project the geometry, almost forgot about that. Finish. Okay. Cut all. And there we're done. So file, save as. This one's going to be 86A. All right, this last one here is going to be 86B. This one's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. This is what what our final product is to look like. So we're going to start the typical way. We're going to start with a sketch on the XY plane. And we're going to start with the rectangular cube. So I'm going to go to 3.75. I can finish the sketch. I can extrude that out to 1. Okay. Then I'm going to come over here to this side. I'm going to place a sketch on it. I'm going to project the geometry. And I'm going to create the triangle or wedge just like before. So I'm going to try to extrude that or cut that out of the way. And there I have that triangle. Now, what's going to happen is if I try to put a new sketch on this plane, and I try to extrude something from it, it goes out on the angle of that plane, and that's not what we're looking for. Okay, so I needed to delete that. So what I have to do is I have to implement the plane feature. And what I want to do is I need to implement a plane from an existing plane that's parallel from what I already have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset plane, but I need to offset it from the back. So I'm going to select the back, and if I tell it to go an inch, you can see it kind of goes an inch away. But I want it on this part. So I'm going to type in there -1 inch. And that puts that plane. Now, if you think of a plane, kind of like a glass plane, like a big sheet of glass in front of that. So that's what I need. Now what I can do with that is I can place a sketch on this plane. Okay. Now, as you can see, the plane, it even comes as work plane 1. It's actually bigger than the piece that I have. So now it's really important that I project that geometry. And from that projected geometry, I can create a rectangle approximately the size that I need. 0.875. Whoops. What happened there? All right. All that did is I'm going to manually place that in a little further. Try that again. There we go. I can finish the sketch, and I'm going to extrude from the plane straight ahead into what I needed there. As you can see, it's going into the piece. And as long as it's going in there far enough, I really don't even have to go in. You can almost see. Alright, this last one here is going to be H6B. This one's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. This is what what our final product is to look like. So we're going to start the typical way. We're going to start with a sketch on the XY plane. And we're going to start with the rectangular cube. So I'm going to go to 3.75. I can finish the sketch. I can extrude that out to 1. Okay. Then I'm going to come over here to this side. I'm going to place a sketch on it. I'm going to project the geometry. And I'm going to create the triangle or wedge just like before. So I'm going to try to extrude that or cut that out of the way. And there I have that triangle. Now, what's going to happen is if I try to put a new sketch on this plane, and I try to extrude something from it, it goes out on the angle of that plane, and that's not what we're looking for. Okay? So I needed to delete that. So what I have to do is I have to implement the plane feature. And what I want to do is I need to implement a plane from an existing plane that's parallel from what I already have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset plane, but I need to offset it from the back. So I'm going to select the back, and if I tell it to go an inch, you can see it kind of goes an inch away. But I want it on this part. So I'm going to type in there -1 inch. And that puts that plane. Now, if you think of a plane, kind of like a glass plane, like a big sheet of glass in front of that. So that's what I need. Now, what I can do with that is I can place a sketch on this plane. Okay. Now, as you can see, the plane, it even comes as work plane 1. It's actually bigger than the piece that I have. So now it's really important that I project that geometry. And from that projected geometry, I can create a rectangle approximately the size that I need. 0.875. Whoops. What happened there? All right. All that did is I'm going to manually place that in a little further. Try that again. There we go. I can finish the sketch, and I'm going to extrude from the plane straight ahead into what I needed there. As you can see, it's going into the piece, and as long as it's going in there far enough, I really don't even have to go in. You can almost see it's going in the whole full. If I take that in about 0.75, that's going to be good. All right, so there's my finished product, and that's what it's supposed to look like. And what I can do is, if I want to get rid of that plane, I can come over here to the work plane, and if I right-click on that, all I have to do is get rid of visibility there, and then it's finished. So I'm going to save this as 86B.